People will talk. Welcome to the latest edition of the Ep10 podcast. Joining me here in studio, of course, is Maria.
Hi, how are you?
And a very special guest as well, Graham MacIndoe. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, thank you so much for making time for us. We know you're a very busy man and also a very high-profile guest for us today as well. We'll discuss your highlights. You're a photographer, you're a teacher, and you photograph people like the National and actors that have popped up in major shows as well. So first of all, you're living in New York. You're originally from Scotland. So how have you made your way from Scotland over to New York, and what are your experiences like living in the Big Apple?
Yeah, I left Scotland to go to London at first, and I spent a few years in London. And then my girlfriend at that time, we were both at college, and my girlfriend got pregnant, and we were just like, oh, we had a kid, and we were like, we'd always wanted to go to New York. I'd visited it a couple of times, and she had separately, and we were like, oh, let's just go for a couple of years while we've got a kid, otherwise we'll never go. And so we just kind of packed our bags, sold our stuff down Brick Lane Market, came to New York, and I've been here ever since. It's 30 years this summer. It's crazy.
Wow. Do you ever point for home?
Yeah, I get nostalgic and romantic about going home, and then when I go, it gets knocked on the head pretty quick. I do like it, but I mean, I do like it, and I grew up in between Edinburgh and Glasgow, and so when I go back, I tend to go to Edinburgh more often, because I went to art college there, and I know a lot of people there still, and it's a great town. I really like it. The weather can be kind of crap, but when you've been in New York for a long time, everywhere else seems really small and parochial. But then I guess New York is as well in a lot of ways, because I have a small circle of friends here. But I think I'd like to go back sometime. I would, and maybe stay there. I don't know. I mean, New York's brilliant, but the hustle is never ending, and I'm getting a bit old for that, and it's extremely expensive, it's a crazy expensive place. And then I go back to Scotland, and all my friends are complaining about how much it costs to buy and rent stuff, and I'm just like, wow, you have no idea, and then you have to pay for your health care and everything here. I mean, New York's a great place if you've got money. It's not so great and I'm all right, but it's not so great if you've not, and and the politics here are kind of stressful, getting jammed in your throat every day. I think the Trump presidency did something to this country that nobody ever imagined it would do. It divided it, and it gave voice and agency and platforms to people that have just been like lurking in the shadows for so long, and now they're part of the mainstream and they're part of the political parties and the agenda, and it's kind of rough being around all that. Not that Boris Johnson's a great guy either. And unfortunately, Scotland's still under the rule of the Brexiter in chief, or one of them. So, he's a disaster as well. But at least in Scotland, you're kind of away for that, So, yeah, back to your original thing. Yeah, I do yearn to go back sometimes. And I've been going back lately more often because both my parents are getting older, and I've not seen them off and on for years, and I'm making a concerted effort to see them, And so, yeah, I've been back a lot lately.
Yeah, you mentioned the politics. Obviously, I'm Irish. I live in Spain. It's just a book falling in the background. You can ignore that. And Maria is, of course, Spanish, but she's lived in Durham you lived in Durham for a few years as well.
Yeah.
So when big things are happening politically, like has happened here in Spain, for example, with Catalonia and these different things, as a person who's not American but has been there for like 30 years, is it comfortable for you to say to your friends, this guy's a clown, or kind of voice your opinion, or are you kind of a bit more reserved than you would be maybe commentating on things in Scotland?
No, I'm not very reserved. And the thing about New York is we live in a very liberal bubble. It's kind of like living in LA and New York and San Francisco. These liberal bubbles. Then you got these other states and these other places. Like my wife's family come from northern Michigan, and that's where the Trump recount started, up there. and there's a big anti-vax movement. There's the Michigan militia. It's all about guns. You see people walking around supermarkets with guns attached to them. And I'm not talking about handguns. I'm talking about guns. So it's those sort of things. I mean, the Constitution is an amazing piece of writing, but it's also people take it so literally and then misinterpret it. And it's the right to bear arms and the right to free speech and the right to this and the right to that. And it becomes kind of problematic, But, the Supreme Court and those people and a lot of the judges are constitutionalists that believe in the Constitution right down to the word, even though, most things get rewritten over history. It's sort of become a wee bit more inclusive and contemporary. But that one's kind of stuck in stone in a place that it should be, I think, upgraded.
So you're talking about big and the contrast between big and small places. No, you were saying New York is a huge place, but then in the end it feels quite small as well. So at the same time, your work has featured all around the world. So it's been many publications and art galleries in many different countries. How does that feel for you? Do you have a grasp of how international you are, or do you just keep yourself to yourself?
Somewhat. I mean, I'm not a big and famous photographer. I'm just somebody who's done some stuff that's been lucky enough to get out there, really, But yeah, I mean, I'm lucky, I've had some crazy ups and downs in my life, and I still managed to work in a job that I'm passionate about and I like, being a freelancer, teaching. I love teaching, and I love doing photography as well. I mean, I did work more commercially years ago. I still do commercial work, but I do less commercial work now than I used to in terms of like advertising and stuff like that. But these projects, like working with a national and multi-year long projects, are really good and interesting, and I get to travel with them when that's on the road. And then just the other side, I mean, I'm still passionate about music. I'm as passionate as going to see bands now, almost, as when I was like 15, 16, 17 in Scotland, which I loved doing. It was like, it introduced me to that whole punk rock explosion that Colin was also part of, when it came along when we were young teenagers, and we were all either in bands or into bands or got to see bands constantly, and it was mind-boggling to me to think that I went to see the Clash when I was like 14 and my mom and dad even let me, and stuff like that, and we would dye our hair and spike it up and, paint t-shirts and all that sort of stuff. And I look back at pictures and I think, that's bonkers. I've got dyed orange hair and I'm only 15. But, I mean, I guess, but no, I look at like my sister's kids and everything, and obviously kids are into music at a young age, It's like, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going off at a tangent here, but
no, it's all good.
Photography, it's given me a great life. It's given me that ability to travel and go places and meet people I would never, I've got to hang out with, Tony Bennett and Michael Jackson and Gary Oldman and a whole bunch of other people, and I'm not a celebrity photographer, just these things came along occasionally. I was never a celebrity magazine photographer. I did a lot of other things, But it's nice when those things happen. I still get to meet some great people, But yeah, I mean, that world has changed. It's harder now. Everybody wants to be a photographer, it seems. There's loads and loads of photography schools and students, and everybody's got a platform. When I did it, you had boxes of prints that you took to picture editors and ad agencies and designers and filled out your portfolio, which is a tangible thing, and you flipped through it. Now everybody's got all these online platforms, so it's like almost anybody can be a photographer. So the bar's kind of high to be successful, But yeah, it's given me some great opportunities, And as I said, I used to do a lot more commercial and advertising sort of stuff. And then you probably know, I fell into a period of drug addiction, which sort of overtook my life for a while and for a long while. And then when I came back out of that, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I could pull it together. I had 10 years of active addiction. I ended up incarcerated and almost deported from America. And I was just like, I got a criminal record, I've been off the scene for years. What am I going to do? Maybe I didn't get deported, luckily, but I was like, how am I going to, the whole world had changed digital. I'd been in the heroin days. And then when I came back, it all changed from analog to digital. And I didn't even know what digital cameras were. It's like, it was crazy. But I was contemplating getting a job in the parks department, like digging holes for trees and stuff, which would have been fine. But luckily I managed to pull it together, and maintain my, photographic career somewhat. It wasn't easy, it was hard, but I was kind of passionate about still trying to at least make an attempt to make that happen for myself,
So when I think you've done work on your own personal experience as well, and when you're drawing from that, well, I guess it's easier to kind of make sense, maybe not make sense of it, but work with it. And when you're taking photographs of Sandra Oh or Peter Dinklage, is it weird to, not weird maybe, but is it difficult to kind of get into that headspace where, like, how do I do this? What do they want? What should this thing be?
No, I don't find it difficult, I kind of seize the moment. And sometimes sometimes I'm in a situation where you don't get a lot of time with people. They give you very little time. They're busy, they got like all these other things going on and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I just kind of grab the moment when it comes along and take that opportunity. But, I mean, it's not difficult, or, I don't think, wow, this is crazy. I mean, once in a blue moon, but, if an opportunity arises, but, I mean, a lot of my, it's rewarding, but, I do a lot of work around addiction and recovery and harm reduction and sort of trying to destigmatize drug use and sort of those with, mental illnesses and stuff like that, and anything that stigmatizes people and keeps them trapped in these sort of negative spaces, or if they're in those spaces and they want to stay in them, just not stigmatizing them in a way that they take risky behaviors, I mean, once you ostracize people and push them to the edges and stuff like that, then the chances of them then, having problematic drug use and stuff like that is much, much more, So, I recently I've done a lot of work at syringe exchanges and stuff like that, and sort of art and writing classes, and done big projects to try and sort of demystify what harm reduction is about and what syringe exchange is about, and what, especially with the overdose crisis here in America, and I'm sure in Europe as well, And your neighbours, Portugal, have made some more serious steps, and it's been effective. They decriminalised. It's not like they're giving the go-ahead for everybody to just go mad and use drugs, but they're sort of saying, well, it comes from a place that we can't arrest and incarcerate our way out of this one. That's what America's tried to do with the war on drugs, and it's obvious it doesn't work. You can't arrest your way out of that, it's a bigger thing than that, and I spent time incarcerated for drug offences, and I wasn't dealing drugs or selling drugs or transporting drugs. I was just an addict, and I got arrested for buying drugs. I ended up in Rikers Island, and then in another prison, and it's like, that sort of stuff doesn't really help you, because there's not even any programming in there. There's not anything to help you. All it does is surround you by other people, and most of the people were in there for drug-related offences. So you just find out how to shoplift better, or buy drugs cheaper, or hook up with different dealers, or go to different neighbourhoods, or how to evade the cops. Because it is not conducive to anything beyond that criminality mindset. So I mean,
actually.
Yes.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go. I'm talking to
No, I was just gonna say, because we were actually going to ask you about that. Like, what you're talking about is really interesting, because one of the things we read about your work was like how it was very important for you to remove stereotypes from, like, well, exactly what you were talking about. And we were just curious. You've just talked about how these reinsertion programs that, well, are non-existent in some countries, and in others, like, they're not in place properly, and you use your photography as a tool to do that, to try and teach people about issues and remove those stereotypes. So how do you do that? Like, how do you do that through your photography? How can you achieve that? Because it seems from the outside, it seems a really difficult task.
I mean, it is a difficult task, and people have knee-jerk reactions, and the press and the media have painted pictures of drug users and addicts and, drug dealers and the drug war as being this thing, like The Wire, or which is part of it is that, but, the go-to imagery for the media and the press to use around drug addictions are, some guy or girl shooting up in the neck behind an empty truck or a garbage can or blah, blah, blah. And yes, that happens. But so many other stages in drug use is out there as well, but it stigmatizes people. So when I was an addict, all my dad could think about was I was this addict, regardless of the fact that, I mean, I did fall pretty hard, but there were steps, and, you know, and it causes distress to families as well, the harms that are caused to families by that stigma, and people judging families based on their perception of what a drug user is based on what they saw in the Sun or the Daily News or whatever the tabloid newspapers are that tend to do this sort of stuff. And even some of the better newspapers, you know, they gravitate towards those images that are sort of clickbait, as you would call it, and they're very stereotypical. Even some of the newspapers here, like in New York Times, and that, I've seen that sort of imagery used again and again and again and again. You know, like big, huge issues about the opioid epidemic, and it's all victim, 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 and they don't talk about solutions, and they don't show photographs that are solutions. So a lot of the work I've done is like gone around different states, working with non-profits or other advocacy groups and photographing the people that provide services on the ground, you know, that go around and distribute needles and provide healthcare and put people when they're ready and they need it into treatment facilities, or at least point them in the right direction, you know. And it's hard, you know, a lot of people are trapped in drug use, and it's like, oh, get them treatment. And it's like, yeah, but if they go into treatment and they come out and they're left with no housing and a criminal record and no money and no support network, they're going to fall back into it again. And that's what happens again and again and again and again. I still have a criminal record that prevents me from getting certain housing and makes insuring a car and various other things in my life, even going for jobs. They ask to see your criminal record. So, you know, I was a drug addict. I bought drugs. I got criminalized, but I'm subsequently still criminalized. 12 years later, I'm clean, I'm healthy, I'm a teacher. I do all these great things, but I'm still labeled as this guy from my criminal record of my series of arrests for buying drugs, which are all trumped up by the police to make you look 10 times worse, and they never go away. And it's not just your arrest convictions, it's not your conviction, it's the arrest data. It's not it's everything that the police write down. So mine makes me look totally gangster, and I was never a gangster in my life, you know. But it's like that thick, and it's got because there's this thing in the criminal justice system. When they arrest you for one thing, your lawyer's going to fight it, so they add a couple of others just for good measure, just to make it stick. So that if you get arrested for one thing and the cops add another 2 or 3, and your judge and the lawyer goes, well, let's get him off with that, let's let him off with that, let's give him a pass, but you can give him this. But it's the original one, so you're still getting beat, you know? So, yeah.
It seems like a tough place, the States, because whenever I know people who are Europeans who go to the States, even for a holiday, they come back. And I lived there for a couple of months as well on a J1 visa. And you come back with an impression that if you fall in America, it's a harder fall than it is in other countries. And even seeing reports or doing throughout the years, they've cut in different states very frequently homeless shelters or shelters for people who have drug addiction, for example. So the kind of welfare system in different parts of America seems to be very, very limited, and you don't get the same protection as you would in other European countries. Is at least my impression, the impression that other people I know have also have of living in America.
Yeah, and it's down to the fact that it's an extremely capitalist country. Everything is run on money. The healthcare system, big pharma, privatized prisons, privatized immigration, privatized homeless shelters. It's all run on the dollar. And so when you have education as well. So when you have a country where you have to pay for everything, basically, and unemployment runs it really quick. And once you're off at unemployment, you're on the welfare state, you know, and welfare here is just, it's so bad. It's so little money. And, you know, they wonder why there's crime. If you keep people in poverty, there's going to be crime. You know, I mean, poverty is a massive thing here. You know, it's a huge, huge, huge overlooked thing in this country is poverty, you know, and people use drugs to get out of poverty. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to notice that. When you keep people trapped in poverty and you give them little access to education and healthcare and the other things that a normal so-called great country, first world country should be providing its citizens, it ends up being where it is, you know, here, you know, I mean, poverty, racism, addiction, all these problems, you know, and I'm not trying to paint a really dark, horrible picture of America. It's it has got great things going for it. And it is but if you fall through the gaps, it can be a really tough place to drag yourself back up from, you know, it's not designed to help you.
And moving from a big country to a small country, I believe you have photographs of Galway and horses and a little story around that as well. And since this podcast is half Irish, could you fill us in on the background of that?
Yeah, I went to Ireland a couple of times in the 80s and hiking around and just taking pictures. And I went to the Aran Isles and took some pictures of guys fishing off the coast there and went through Galway and Cork and everything. But yeah, the main body of work that I got out of that was, and both my brother and sister live in Dublin. They've lived there for a long. Yeah, with their kids. Yeah, they're both Irish now and live there. And so I stumbled across this horse fair at Ballinasloe, which is between Galway and Dublin.
Yeah.
And I kind of just stumbled across it, you know, and I stayed there for 3 days. I slept in a wee room above a pub there. You know, I was with one of my mates and I took all these photographs there, you know, and I made a little fanzine, a little book published of them and stuff like that. So yeah, it was great. It was quite an eye opener for me. And I love Ireland. I go to Dublin a lot, but you know, I'm kind of at that stage now that my wife is saying, "Oh, every time we go, we just go to Dublin, and you know, can we go somewhere else?" So you know, I need to do some of those little old road trips that I did before and take her, you know, up to, you know, the Giant's Causeway and Galway and Cork and stuff like that, you know. So
Cork's a great place, or any place in the West Coast as well.
He would say. Well, since he's had his question about Ireland, then you know, I just wanted to ask you about Madrid, where we are, because we heard that you are expecting to, or hoping to be here in June for an exhibition.
Yeah, in June. Yeah, I'm meant to be having this exhibition that's been organised by the cultural department there, and this guy that's a music writer who lives in Barcelona that wrote a review of some of my national stuff for a magazine up there. And his name is Tony Garcia, and he's actually meeting with them tomorrow just to try and confirm everything up. So we've submitted it as a project proposal in that big place where they have a number of exhibition spaces. And he's he's going to get back to me and tell me which one it is, and then it'll be a series of photographs and projections and stuff like that in there. So, and that would be, the tentative dates are the 6th of June to the end of June, to the 30th of June.
Yeah, we're really excited about that because we actually spent a lot of time there. There's a lot of like great art exhibitions, and we've done podcasts about exhibitions there many times. So it'll be great. Hopefully, you get to come over and maybe we get to meet you in person.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to come over because I'm going to be with the Nationals are playing at Primavera in Barcelona 2 days before that. So, and then they're playing in Berlin somewhat after that. I have to check the schedule, but they'll be back on the road by then. So, you know, I'm hoping to take in a few gigs with them and keep on photographing them on the road, you know, and stuff. So, yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to go to Primavera Sound and then come down to Madrid for a week and then go back to Barcelona and then something along those lines.
Nice plan.
It's a great plan, and we won't keep you any longer. We just have one more question for you. We know, apart from the photography and everything, you've written a memoir as well, and like you've given talks and everything. We just want to ask you just a little bit about being a Renaissance man, I guess. You know, like doing these different things. Have you enjoyed the process of writing a book and stretching yourself in these new areas?
I find writing really painful. I mean, I can write till the cows. My wife, I wrote the book with my wife. It's like it's about our relationship and my fall into addiction and my recovery and my time in prison. And each chapter, there's a chapter of her and then a chapter of me and a chapter of her and a chapter of me. And I mean, she's a good writer. That's what she does. She's a writer and she was a journalist at the New York Times for a long time. So, you know, I mean, I could write. I'm very good at, I didn't have the greatest education. So, you know, I'm not a literary type of guy, but I can write spiels of sort of thought. It's just crafting it into language. That's the hard bit. So I got to give kudos to my wife, Susan, for doing that, you know, because I would write longhand. I don't do it on the computer. I sit with, I do it here if you can see here from my students. I write still on paper and pen. I'm just kind of old school. So, you know, I write everything down like that. I might craft it into an email or a Word document later, you know, but for the book, I did a lot of longhand, and my wife would go through it and highlight things, expand on this and that. It was an interesting process for me. It was painful. It was hard, and it was painful because I had to dig into parts of my life that I'd kind of closed the door on, and then had to go back. And that was like, some of it was cathartic. Some of it was just like, wow, you had that moment to get out of there, and you didn't. You know, and some of it was kind of funny, like saying, wow, and that's called chancer. And, you know, it's a word we use in Scotland a lot, probably Ireland. He's such a chancer, you know. I'm looking at these situations I'm in going, wow, what a chancer. You got away with that. You did this, or you pulled the wool over this guy's eyes, you know, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was tough. I learned a lot about writing, and I learned a lot about, you know, just constructing and taking your time. I tend, as you know, here I'm talking a lot. I'm very animated, you know, and I can be the life and soul of the party, and I'm the worst person in the world on drugs because I never shut up, you know. But you know, it taught me a lot about how to compress and expand time when you're writing, and that's something I'd never thought about. You know, it's like, can you take I just write it all as it happened, you know, and my wife would say, that is so brilliant, but you've only covered it in 2 sentences. You need to expand that for 2 pages. Talk about what was going on around you, drag it out. And then there's other things. She goes, you've written 3 pages on that. It's only worth a line, you know, because it's not really that important. So it was like choosing the moments to expand and the moments to compress, and you know, the ebb and flow you're writing as well, making it more poetic and like sort of engaging, and then having a lull and then bringing it back up again. So it was an interesting process for me. Don't think I'll do it again.
Well, it's off the bucket list now.
Right.
And also, it's also fascinating that you're a teacher, because we've also had this teaching experience as well. So you're a man of many talents. You've been so generous with your time, and we love the fact that you answer the questions at length as well. That's great for us as well. Okay. It's funny you mentioned it as well, because I was saying this to you the other day. I was watching this Colombian movie festival, and Daniel Brühl, the German actor, he gave lots of long answers as well. And the guy who was hosting was like, "No, can you just stop giving so much detail?" And I was like, "No, let the man speak. That's the most natural thing." But at least for me, Graham, I'll just like to say thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you so much. It was great to have you.
Thank you, and I'll see you in Madrid in June.
Definitely.
Perfect.
All right, brilliant. I'll be in touch.